Hey everybody, this is Father Sean for another episode of the Couch Chat, and we're going through the merger meetings about why merging parishes is helpful and why there's a just cause for doing it in our own group of parishes. We've talked about what that means. Last week, the video, it was one of the reasons is there's already so much collaboration between our four parishes already. So there's so much that we're doing together. So what other reasons kind of justify having a merger, bringing our four parishes into one? One, unfortunately, is just the sacramental decline, that there is not as many people coming to the sacraments. And we could go through all of the numbers, and if you want to, you can watch the merger video or you can pull up the slides. But let's just say over the last 25 to 30 years, the number of people getting baptized, getting married in the church, coming for First Communion or confirmation, or just coming to Mass on Sunday has steadily declined, along with the number of priests. So in 1993, for example, 30 years ago, there was 4 priests serving our group of parishes, and today there's 2 of us. But alongside of that is an insufficient number of pastors. And one of the things the law of the church says is that each pastor should only have the care of one parish, that each pastor should only have one parish. But of course, we're not in that place because, all over the archdiocese, almost every pastor has multiple parishes. So there's not enough pastors. And so the hope that the Archdiocese has in this whole Beacons of Light process is, one, that priests who don't have the capability of being a pastor, whether that's they don't have the gifts or they just don't have the energy, aren't pastors. And so that might mean that somebody's a good priest, might do it very well. Maybe that means he's teaching high school, or he's in a parochial vicar at a parish, or he's a hospital chaplain, and that's okay. And that means priests have a bit of time to gain the experience they need to become a pastor. So I, for example, became a pastor at 28 years old with 2 years of experience as a priest. And I mean this in all honesty and humility. I do think the people of God suffered a bit because of that. And, people might say, oh, no, Father, don't be too hard on yourself. But there are definitely things that's like, man, if I had more experience, I would have done that differently. Or if I, whatever, like I think if I would have been a little bit more savvy, had been through things a little bit more, I would have done things very differently. Some of those lessons you can only learn by making mistakes. But I really do think it's for the better if priests aren't named pastors as quickly as I was named a pastor, or many other people who are that. So one of the other things that I think this is a really good thing is it will foster stability. So the last, maybe even like 25 years in our parishes, there's been this sense of like, what's next, right? Like what's next with merging? What's next? Are they going to close our parish? Or what's going to happen? And what this does will provide stability, a grouping of churches into a parish that will be able to be stable for decades to come. And that means we won't have to focus on all of these questions all the time. And we can actually focus on that first thing I mentioned, the sacramental decline, right? We won't have to worry about who's paying which bill, or are we going to close, or all these different things. But we can actually worry about the message of the gospel, of how do we bring people to Jesus Christ. So that's one thing. It'll just provide stability, and we won't have to wonder what's next. Our discussions won't have to be about all of this Beacons of Light stuff, but it can actually be about Christ and his church, because we don't have to worry about as much administrative business. So another thing is that this will just help us better utilize our clergy, our lay personnel. And 2 examples just from a financial standpoint, because that's kind of where we are at our parishes. One, I won't have to go to 4 finance committee meetings. Now I can't make it to all of them as it is, but with each having a separate parish, that's each one having its own finances, that's each one having its own finance committee meeting. It's a better use of my time, a better use of the evenings that could be spent meeting with marriage prep couples, teaching a catechism class or something like that. But then also our lay personnel. So think like right now, when a bill comes in, we have to make 4 copies of the bill if it's getting split 4 ways, so that each parish keeps its own records, because they're 4 separate entities. And each bill gets input into 4 different accounting softwares to make sure that we keep everything separate, although we're paying one check and reimbursing each other. So the time that takes is just like not necessary. Like we could be doing so many better things with our time than inputting bills and 4 things. And then also we would have better oversight, I think for myself or those that even work in like the business area. Because with 4 sets of books, 4 financial reports, 4 checking accounts that you're keeping track of, you just simply can't keep as good of oversight as you can if there was just one. You think about if you had oversight over 4 different families' finances, it would be much more challenging than if you just had one family's finances even if you own 4 different homes. So that's just the thing. You'd be able to keep better oversight of where we are, profits, losses, and all of those sorts of things. And one thing that a priest wrote in a blog, and this was a priest down in Dayton, but he served in Shelby County a few years ago, Father Martin Fox, and what he said, and I'm just going to quote him and then maybe break it down. He said, "Because if you don't take these steps, especially combining parishes as a single legal entity, the result will either be a neglectful pastor, because he's not keeping track of the 4 different parishes or 5 or whatever it is, or else a pastor who's miserable and will want to go elsewhere, very possibly out of the priesthood." And that might seem a bit dramatic, but if you're trying to keep as much oversight as you need to, and you can't, right? Like that's just, it's exhausting and depressing and disheartening. And we have to think, well, maybe it's a little much that the pastor will be miserable and want to leave. And I don't know, the number of priests that have taken leaves of absence for 3 months, some of them just taking time off, some of them going to inpatient psychological care, it's a lot. And it's disheartening to see so many of your brothers do that as a priest. But maybe one of the points of all of this is, so you're looking at budgets, right? And one of the things that Father Fox mentioned is the budget is the policy. And I thought about that because I never really thought that what your budget says is that's your decision making. So you think about if somebody runs for the governor of the state of Ohio and he runs on the ticket that says we need to redo our infrastructure, right? Our bridges, maybe our rail lines, our roads, our highways, our airports, all of our transportation infrastructure needs to be improved. Great, maybe people say that's a really good thing. But then you get his budget after he's elected, and there is no increased spending for bridges, for airports, for highways. You say, well, they're not going to get any better. The same thing's true for our parishes. So to have oversight in the budget is important because that's the policy. If there's a greater amount of money given because you say we need to really improve our grief ministry, how we care for those who are mourning the loss of a loved one, well, that means more money, more resources, more time should be given to that. If you say the same thing with youth formation or how we bring fallen away Catholics back to the church, what the budget says, that's the policy. And so to be able to look over 4 policy documents ain't really that easy. And so you get better oversight and better direction, better purpose in how we're living our lives in our parish by unifying things, by not keeping everything so spread out. So those are the reasons, right? And maybe that's a little bit much. Maybe it's a bit of the shotgun shot at you the last 2 weekends as to why this is a helpful thing. But after reflecting on it, talking to people over the last, almost 6 years as a pastor, 2 years before that seems to be why this is a good thing. So anyways, Father Sean for this episode of the Couch Chat. Sorry if this one is going a little long, but such is life, So take care, God bless. We'll see you next week on the Couch Chat. Sorry, I just thought next week, I believe, is All Saints' Day. So we'll see you at Mass for the great solemnity of all the saints.